Okay, welcome back to part 2 of chapter 1 of book 1 of De Bello Gallico. And this is actually a good place to start because what you read in part 1, in the majority of this first chapter, we know that Caesar wrote. This next little bit here, just this last bit, is, as Hans Friedrich Müller points out to you, it's a little bit confusing. It's some of the grammar is kind of weird, as you guys are going to see in a minute, and there are some scholars who believe that Caesar actually didn't write this, that somebody came in later and just decided, hey, the geography lesson wasn't clear enough, so let's make it even clearer, which they, in some ways, it kind of made it less clear. But we still have to know what it says, so let's start. Eorum una pars, quam Gallos obtenere dictum est, initium capit a flumine Rodano, continetur garumna flumine, oceano, finibus Belgarum, attingit etiam absequanis et Helvetiis flumen renum, vergit ad septentriones. Once again, and pay attention to clauses and endings of words that might in some way go together, or phrases, or prepositional phrases. Just look at the endings as we read it again. Eorum una pars, quam Gallos obtenere dictum est, initium capit a flumine Rodano, continetur garumna flumine, oceano, finibus Belgarum, attingit etiam absequanis et Helvetiis flumen renum, vergit ad septentriones. Okay, so let's start. Are there clauses? And you probably saw one right there toward the beginning. Pretty easy to spot. Quam, right here, to est. Now, inside that clause, well, we'll worry about that actually in a few minutes. Do we see any other clauses? I actually don't, but I do see some prepositional phrases. So, where do we have one? A flumine Rodano. That's one prepositional phrase. Moving on, we have ab sequanis et Helvetiis. That's another. And then finally, ad septentriones. Okay, so now let's take a look at verbs. What do we have in terms of verbs in this sentence? And inside of this one clause that we have dictum est. That is the main verb of the clause. Now there's an infinitive inside there as well. I'm going to try my best to do this. Make the infinity sign. There we go. Obtenere. Moving on. So we know that that's the verb of the main clause. Verb of a clause, sorry, but what are the main verbs in the entire sentence? Well, we have capit. There's one. Moving on, in the second line here, we have continetur. And then moving on, we have attingent. And then finally, vergit. Now, all of these main verbs, capit, continetur, attingent, and vergit, have the same subject. So what is the subject of the entire sentence? And it's found here it is, una pars. Una pars is the subject. Let me get my nominative color out. There we have it. Okay. Now, are there direct objects anywhere? And the answer is, well, we've got a subject. We have our first main verb. And then anything look accusative, I think you probably spotted it, it's initium. That's going to be a direct object. Are there any other direct objects? Well, we do have flumen renum over here. It's the direct object of attingent, since we already know, I mentioned to you, that pars is the subject of all the rest of these verbs. And how about any ablative words? I mean, we do have some ablative prepositional phrases, but other ablative words, do we see them? We've accounted for a lot of these words. Moving on. Ooh, look at this. Garumna with the long mark. Flumine. Last case is the ablative. A-O-E. Is ebus. And then, oceano. And then finibus. Those are all ablative words. So we're good to go there. Notice how they do not have a preposition. So we're going to have to say by, with, from, in, or on. for that to make sense. The first word, aorum, look at it, O-R-U-M. Aurum is plural. It's possessive. That's going to be genitive case of these. Now, this is what the confusing part, because right before, what was Caesar talking about? He was talking about first of all, the Belgae being really strong, and then he was talking about the Helvetians being really strong, and then out of nowhere we have one part of these. What is he talking about? What exactly does he mean by these? Well, the only thing that we could say or construct from the rest of the sentence is that all of a sudden he's talking about one part of the entire nation of Gaul, and he's going to describe very specifically where the borders are of this one particular part. And which part is it? One part of these, which, quam referring back to part, which, this is kind of torturous, which it has been said that the Gauls held. That's kind of a strange way of saying it, or were holding, something like that, which it has been said that the Gauls were holding. In other words, the part of Gaul that he is describing is where the Gauls, aka the Celts, live. In other words, that middle part of Gaul. Remember, the Belgae live in the very north, the Gaul/Celts in the middle, and then the Aquitani in the southwest. So this whole sentence is going to describe the territory of the Gauls/Celts. So one part of these, which it has been said that the Gauls held, capit initium, takes a beginning. That's sort of an idiom in Latin. It literally means seizes a beginning or takes a beginning from the river Rhodanus, and it is held or contained, I guess you could say. It is held in by the Garumna River, by the ocean, and by the borders of the Belgae. You see that there, finibus Belgarum. Atingit etiam flumen renum, and it even touches on or reaches the Rhine River from the Sequani and the Helvetii, meaning like near where the Sequani and the Helvetii live. We already know that the Helvetii, those are one of the tribes that of the Gauls/Celts. They are the bravest of the Gauls/Celts, because just like the Belgae, they live near the Germans. The Sequani, they are another tribe of the Gauls/Celts. So this part, it even touches the Rhine River. I want to even say just at the Sequani and the Helvetii. Literally it says from the Sequani and the Helvetii, or meaning like from their territory. And it lies toward, or is situated toward, Septentriones, which literally means the 7 plow oxen, meaning the stars of the Great Bear, aka the Big Dipper. And so therefore, what direction is that? If you know anything about astronomy, which I don't, so don't feel bad, that means the north. So it lies towards the north. Now, that was a mouthful. Moving on, the next sentence we're going to be talking about, as you can see from the very first word, the Belgae and their territory, I guess. And then finally, Aquitania, that's where the Aquitani live. So, let's take this next sentence. Belgae ab extremis Galliae finibus oriuntur, pertenent ad inferiorem partem fluminis Rheni, spectant in septentrionem et orientem solem. One more time. Belgae ab extremis Galliae finibus oriuntur, pertenent ad inferiorem partem fluminis Rheni, spectant in septentrionem et orientem solem. So, let's start with clauses. Do we see any clauses in this sentence? And the answer is no. But we do see some prepositional phrases that we can mark. We have ab extremis, and really fenibus goes with it. So ab extremis fenibus, right? And then we have ad inferiorem partem, And then we have in septentrionem et orientem solem. So lots of prep phrases here. Now let's take a look at verbs. Do we see our verbs? Yes, we do. There is orientor, followed by pertinent, and finally spectant. How about our subject? What's our subject of this entire sentence? And that would be the Belgae. The Belgae, who are, of course, the bravest of all. And I think that the rest of the sentence, the remaining words we haven't marked, Galliae and fluminus reni, those are genitive, and we'll figure out pretty easily, I think, how they fit in once we translate. So the Belgae, they arise, or begin, something like that, from the furthest borders of Gaul, or in other words, at the furthest borders of Gaul. And they pertinent, they stretch forth to the lower part of the Rhine River, and they spectant, they face into the, well, we know septentrionem is the north, into the north and orientem solem. And what is orientem solem? That means literally the rising sun. And where does the sun rise? It rises in the east. So they face into the north and east. So I'm going to skip ahead for a second. That described this area right here, sort of the northeastern part where the Belgae live. The Celts/Gauls, which was described in the previous sentence, have this main territory. And you see that it goes all the way over here to the Rhine River near where the Sequani and the Helvetii live. And then finally, all the way down here, last sentence, the Aquitanii live in Aquitania. So, there you have it. And finally, Aquitania agarumna flumine ad Pyrenaios montes, et eam partem oceani, quae est ad Hispaniam pertinet. Spectat inter a ocassum solis et septentriones. So Aquitania agarumna flumine ad Pyrenaios montes, et eam partem oceani, quae est ad Hispaniam pertinet. Spectat inter ocassum solis et septentriones. Do we see any clauses? I see one, and it's right here, quae. And where does it end? And the answer would be Hispaniam. So, now let's look at prepositional phrases. Again, this little section seems to be full of them. Agarumna flumine, that's one, followed by ad Pyrenaios montes, and really goes into eam partem. Inside of this little clause, we have ad Hispaniam, and then we have inter ocassum solis et septentriones. What's our subject of this entire sentence? I think you all figured it out pretty early on. It's Aquitania. Where are our verbs? Well, inside the clause, we have one verb, which is est, but our main verbs here seem to be pertinet and spectat. So then, putting it all together, the only word left is oceani, and that is genitive. So here we go. Aquitania stretches forth from the Garumna River to the Pyrenees Mountains and to that part of the ocean which is ad Hispaniam, which is, you could say, at Spain. I know that's kind of a strange way of saying it. But if you look at the map, you'll see that it does indeed do that, right, which is near Spain. And it faces between ocassum solis, the falling of the sun, and the north. Well, where does the sun fall? It falls in the west. So it faces between the west and the north. So that's the end of chapter 1. Kind of an odd little bit of geography there. The Latin is really not that difficult. It just kind of, not really sure what it adds. Maybe it adds something. Did Caesar write this part? Who knows? Okay, see you next time for chapter 2.